It started as a tennis rivalry but turned into pure hatred. Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic are two of the most iconic figures in tennis history, their names etched into the sport's pantheon alongside Rafael Nadal as part of the Big Three. Together, they dominated the ATP Tour for nearly 2 decades. Yet beneath the surface of their competitive encounters, a narrative has persisted that Federer harbored a deep-seated dislike, even hatred, for Djokovic. While Federer, ever the gentleman, rarely spoke ill of his rival outright, subtle clues, on-court clashes, and their contrasting personas suggest a relationship marked by tension. When Novak Djokovic burst onto the scene in the mid-2000s, Roger Federer was at the peak of his powers. The Swiss maestro had already won 9 Grand Slam titles by the end of 2006, his elegant game and unflappable demeanor earning him universal adoration. Djokovic, a brash young Serb with a relentless baseline game, was an outsider to the Federer-Nadal duopoly that defined tennis at the time. But where the animosity between Djokovic and Federer started, in 2006, Serbia played against Switzerland in the Davis Cup. Switzerland entered the tie as favorites, bolstered by the presence of Roger Federer, the world #1. Federer had just won the 2006 US Open, his 3rd straight title there, and was in imperious form. Wawrinka was a rising talent, but still overshadowed by his compatriot. Serbia, meanwhile, relied on a youthful squad with 19-year-old Novak Djokovic, ranked number 20 and fresh off a breakout season, emerging as their star. Djokovic, in his 2nd Davis Cup appearance, was still establishing himself on the senior tour. Wawrinka had beaten Djokovic in their only prior meeting, at the 2006 Umag final, where Djokovic retired due to breathing issues. The turning point came during the 4th set in the match. Djokovic was losing that match 2-1. In that point of the match, he decided to take a medical timeout. After the timeout, Djokovic made fantastic comeback and won the match in 5 sets. Wawrinka, who had momentum after winning the 2nd and 3rd sets, appeared frustrated. The break allowed Djokovic to regroup, and he returned with renewed vigor, eventually turning the tide. For Serbia, it was a tactical success. For Switzerland, it felt like gamesmanship. What happened after the game may be the reason why they cooled their relationship for the first time in their careers. While Wawrinka remained diplomatic post-match, Federer didn't hold back. Watching from the sidelines, he was incensed by what he perceived as Djokovic exploiting the rules. Federer lashed out in the press, saying Novak faked his injury, and his medical timeout was taken just to disturb his opponent's rhythm. 2 years later, after that famous match in the Davis Cup, they met again, but this time in Monte Carlo. Federer grew frustrated with Novak's parents, who were vocally cheering from the stands. As their shouts disrupted play, Federer turned toward their box and sharply said, "Be quiet."
Huh! Be quiet.
Djokovic retired in that match with a breathing illness. The retirement followed a mysterious pattern of in-match withdrawals by the Serb, who pulled a similar act against Andy Roddick at the Australian Open.
He's going to stop. Only he knows how much he's suffering.
And it seems that Federer was waiting for something like this to happen. He immediately started criticizing Djokovic, calling him a quitter. He blasted Novak for giving up too easily. That it happened before, and it is disappointing.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be diplomatic, but we're kind of surprised also with the heat getting into him like that and seeing him stop.
Well, I mean, it's happened before, so I mean, it's not the guy who's never given up in his career, you know. So that's kind of disappointing to see, you know, when you got 2 top guys playing each other and you give up. I mean, he gave up against me in Monaco this year because of last year because of sore throat. Yeah, so I mean, those are kind of things, you know, you wonder about. I've only given up basically once in my career. That came just now in Paris against Blake when I couldn't move because of my back, you know. But
Federer has long been tennis's statesman, elegant, composed, and diplomatic, a player who rarely lets his emotions betray him in public. Beneath his polished exterior, it seemed Federer harbored a genuine dislike for Djokovic, a sentiment that, while usually veiled, bubbled to the surface in that moment. This wasn't just about the match. Federer's frustration hinted at a deeper irritation with Djokovic, a player who'd already begun to challenge his reign. They met again just a couple of weeks later in Miami. But this time, Djokovic answered on the court like a true champion. He beat Federer in 3 sets. At the end of the match, he got another cold handshake from Roger. Nothing less, nothing more. Novak just didn't care about Federer's criticism and acted very friendly. He made a good eye contact during the handshake and wanted to be nice. And this is something that is noticeable in all of their handshakes. For Federer, who had grown accustomed to being the sport's undisputed king, Djokovic represented a new and unwelcome challenge. Unlike Nadal, whose clay court dominance complemented Federer's grass and hard court mastery, Djokovic's all-court versatility directly threatened Federer's supremacy across surfaces. In 2011, after their epic semi-final at the US Open in which Djokovic saved some crazy points, Federer's frustration spilled out in the press conference. He called Djokovic's match-point-saving forehand lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I had it. I mean, I don't know, there's no more I could do. Snaps one shot and then the whole thing changes. It's strange how it goes, you know. It's just the way he returns that. It's just not a guy who believes much, you know, much anymore in winning, and then to lose against someone like that, it's very disappointing because you feel like he was mentally out of it already, you know, and just gets the lucky shot in and off you go.
Again, some words that make you wonder what level of respect does Federer have for Djokovic. Early in his career, Djokovic's on-court antics, like his imitations of other players or his theatrical celebrations, rubbed some the wrong way, including, perhaps, Federer. He just didn't like that Novak started imitating him. It's obviously not the same if a friend imitates you and if a guy that you don't like does it. Another problem for Federer was Djokovic's father, who was provoking him through the media. In 2011, after winning the Australian Open, he called his son the best tennis player ever, a bold statement given Federer's dominance. He also slammed Federer for having this history of not believing Djokovic's injuries in the past. Federer responded with rare sharpness, saying, "I've got a good handshake with his father, but I don't know if he's a fan of mine." When Djokovic was asked about his father's statements, he said that he cannot control everything his dad says and that he does not agree with many of his opinions. Federer, who valued decorum and humility, might have seen Djokovic's confidence and his family's outspokenness as arrogance, a stark contrast to his own reserved nature. The 2019 Wimbledon final, however, may have been the breaking point. Federer held 2 match points on his serve at 8-7 in the 5th set, only for Djokovic to claw back and win in a historic tiebreak. It was Federer's last real shot at a 21st Grand Slam, and Djokovic's resilience snatched it away. Federer later called it one of the toughest losses of his career. Watching Djokovic lift the trophy on Federer's turf, in front of a crowd that adored him, might have deepened any lingering bitterness. To Federer, Djokovic wasn't just a rival. He was the man who kept rewriting his fairy tale ending. Djokovic and Federer finally buried the hatchet during the Laver Cup when Federer decided to retire. Federer talked about his rivalry with Djokovic in his documentary that was released this year, saying he didn't give him the respect he deserved.
I guess he was the party crasher of Rafa and Roger fans. There was a lot of Rafa-Roger love there. So when Novak came, probably a lot of people saying, like, we don't need a third guy. We're happy with Roger and Rafa. And I think I didn't give Novak the respect he deserved because of his technical flaws. I felt like Novak had a very extreme forehand grip, and his backhand, for me, wasn't as fluid as it is nowadays. But then he ironed those things out super well, and it became an unbelievable monster of a player.